Let's start with the biggest question. Who is God, according to Islam?
God is the most compassionate, the most merciful, the creator of the heavens and the earth. He is one God. He begets not, nor is he begotten. He is unique. He is omnipotent. He is beyond the limitations of man. He is beyond the constructs of our imagination. But he is ever accessible through sincere supplication. When you call upon him alone, one God, he is closer to you than your jugular vein, the Quran tells us. He's known by many names and attributes, but his essence is one. He's one God. No human likeness, no human imperfection can be attributed to him. No partners, no image of him can be constructed. And that is God.
So God represents, he is a feeling of closeness that is accessible to every human being.
Well, God's not a feeling. God is known by names and attributes. We call upon God, but there is certainly a feeling of closeness when you access him. And so I think the beauty of Islam is that as perfect as God is described, he's also so accessible to the imperfect. And so the idea of sincere supplication and connection to him, we worship him alone, we call upon him alone. There's no clergy, there's no barrier between God and us. And that encourages a sincere devotion and commitment to him alone. And so he is certainly described supreme. And God speaks to us through the Quran, and we speak to him through sincere supplication. And his attributes are the furthest from us in terms of their perfection. But he is ever close to us through our supplication, through our prayers, and through our connection to him.
To open the door to that connection, to have a connection with God, how difficult is that process? How difficult was it for you? How difficult is it for the people for the many, many, many Muslims that you've interacted with?
Well, I think that there are different layers of difficulty, right? There is the personal difficulty, submitting yourself to God. Islam requires a complete submission to him. And one of the things that happens is that if we project some of our bad experiences with authority onto our relationship with God, then we immediately perceive him in a certain way that might not allow us to gain a closeness to him, because maybe we didn't have the best relationship with our parents growing up. Maybe we didn't have the best relationship with authority figures in our lives. And so this idea of an ultimate authority to whom you submit yourself can be very difficult. Malcolm X, who was one of the most prominent converts to Islam in American history, talked about the difficulty of prostration for the very first time, putting your head on the ground, putting your face on the ground and praying to God is a very humbling thing. Submitting all of your affairs to him is very humbling. And ultimately, you have to relinquish control. And you can't relinquish control without trust. So you have to learn to trust God. To trust God, you have to know him. And to know him is to love him. And so for me personally, growing up, going through certain difficulties, having a sick parent who struggled in her life with cancer and with strokes, dealing with racism in South Louisiana growing up, it was important for me to learn about God through my difficulties, for example, rather than let those difficulties turn me away from him. Many times people put a barrier between them and God because they can't make sense of the things that are happening in their own lives. And so they project anger towards God and at the same time deny their own belief in him and do away with this natural disposition that every one of us has to believe in him. So there are intellectual barriers, certainly. There are experiential barriers. But I think that one of the beautiful things about Islam is clarity. There is an explanation for his existence. There's an explanation for our existence. There's an explanation for the existence of difficulties and trial, an explanation for the existence of desires and distractions. And it all comes together so beautifully and coherently in Islam. And so I think that for many of us, we want to be our own gods, and ultimately we create and fashion gods in ways that allow us to still be the ultimate determiners of our own fates, of our own story. And that's very unfulfilling when you fail at your own plan. But when you realize that there is one who is all-knowing, that there is one who is all-wise, you actually find peace in submitting yourself to him. And so submitting your will to him, submitting your desires, submitting your own fate to him becomes actually an experience of liberation, because you trust the one that you're submitting to. You trust his knowledge over yours. You trust his wisdom over yours. And that gives you a lot of peace. And then you have direct access to him. You pray to him, you call upon him, you supplicate. And everything in your life suddenly has meaning. You know, in our faith, everything is about intention. And there's an intentionality even behind the seemingly most mundane actions. A morsel of food in the mouth of your spouse, your family, is looked at as a great charity. The way that you enter into a place and exit out of a place, what foot you step in, what foot you step out with, there's an intentionality. There's a word of remembrance that's spoken. There's a word of praise before and after you engage in any action. There are things that you say before you eat, before you sleep. There is meaning even to your sleep. One of the great companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, he said that I seek the reward for my sleep just as I seek the reward for my prayer. Because you sleep to refresh yourself so that you can once again do great things. And the intentionality behind that allows even the sleep to be rewardable. You eat to nourish yourself so that you can do great things. You seek to be in a position of independence and of being sustained so that you can sustain others. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, for example, that the upper hand is better than the lower hand. The upper hand is the giving hand, the lower hand is the receiving hand. So to seek a position where you can help other people, everything becomes intentional. And there's no such thing as, something that is meaningless and without purpose. So every pursuit is ultimately a pursuit of God. And when you pursue God sincerely, then he rewards you not just with paradise in the afterlife, but he rewards you with a great sense of serenity and self-satisfaction here.